pressure PARIA to take or allow action. On the 25th of February, I was party to phone calls between my husband Kazim and PARIA Fuel Trading Company Limited, arguing for work permits to allow a dive rescue by LMCS divers, and/or the many dive experts gathered at Berth 6, volunteering their service and having all the resources on site. I was in the same room as my husband while he was on those phone calls, and his telephone was on speaker. I don't recall who he was talking to on the phone at PARIA. My understanding is that LMCS was seeking to perform a rescue on Saturday, Sunday and Monday. Also, PARIA seized all documents on the LMCS barge, which included certain permits to work. PARIA's multiple decisions to violate the right to human life and the right not to be subjected to cruel and inhuman suffering remain unconscionable. PARIA made these decisions as those inside the pipe continued tapping out distress calls well into Saturday, demonstrating proof of life. PARIA instructed the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard to enforce their decision not to rescue, and armed members of the Coast Guard boarded the LMCS barge and carried out PARIA's instructions. These were the updates which were given by LMCS personnel who were out there on the site to my husband. I heard a conversation between my husband and another person. The person said they heard tapping. They heard SOS code. I heard Kazim tell them to respond by tapping back so they would know they were heard. He said, tap louder and see if they tap louder, and then tap softer to see if they tap softer. They subsequently informed Kazim that when they tapped louder, a louder tap was returned, and when they tapped softer, a softer tap was returned. For me, interactive communication was established, conveying that the divers were alive. The tapping transmitted meaning, and the divers in the pipe were making SOS sounds and wanted to live. Throughout Saturday the 26th and Sunday the 27th, I witnessed at LMCS ongoing discussions between Kazim Ali Sr., his brothers Imtiaz and Hasib Ali, and former senior Petroton staff. This team also attended meetings with Kazim to convince PARIA management to implement the rescue plan for the 4 men. This team were trying to do everything they could to address the situation, given the urgency of the situation. They prepared for the meeting with PARIA, returned from the meeting with PARIA in order to put things in place requested by PARIA, and then returned again to PARIA. 3 days of meetings, including in-person commitments from experienced commercial volunteer rescue divers, failed to change PARIA's resolve not to conduct any rescue mission or to issue LMCS permits to resume the rescue of our people. They lied in their communications, claiming they were doing everything possible, dismissed Christopher Budram's urgent request to go back for them, who were waiting to be rescued, and did not respond to the continuous tapping out of distress calls. In a deadly runaround, pretending to be serious about rescue, yet having decided on recovery, PARIA caused severe suffering to those in the pipeline, those on site, and those ashore. The strain of holding tensions, bristling to act urgently, and outraged by deliberate delay, generated friction, anguish, and torture. On Saturday morning, we met with family and friends who were locked outside PARIA's gate, witnessed and objected to police harassment to disperse us, and sought information and counselling for them. LMCS provided trauma support through printed material, a hotline, an introduction to a psychotherapist, and sessions with trauma team professionals of the Franciscan Institute, and stress relief laser therapies. PARIA never contacted me directly with respect to the incident. I identified the body of our only son, Kazim, on Tuesday, the 1st of March at St. James. Kaz and his father were very close and proudly ran LMCS together. It was wrong to bar a father from saving his son, and wrong to bar Michael Kerben from saving his father. All 4 LMCS men have families and friends who love them. Kaz and his wife Jamie are still in love. PARIA's process lacked justice and integrity. There was no leadership, preparedness, or morality in PARIA's decisions that killed 4 LMCS men who waited excruciatingly in the pipe until they could breathe no more.
Thank you very much indeed for coming. Your evidence is much appreciated. All right, you can stay or go as you please, obviously. Thank you once again. Now, we've reserved our position on 2 other witnesses. Now, I understand that there's evidence from a member of the Kerben family from a statement that has been provided to us. Am I right that it is Celicia Kerben who is going to read that statement? Is it Mr. Ramadar who's going to read it? All right, Mr. Ramadar. Yeah, I think it would be more convenient if you sat down so that we can all hear what you're saying.
Thank you.
And I'd be grateful if you would just read the statement and no more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Statement by the Kerben family, and certainly from Celicia Kerben, the wife of the deceased Faisal Kerben. On the 25th of February 2022, Faisal Kerben left home to go to work 8 a.m. in the morning. In the afternoon, his wife Celicia Kerben got a call from her son, Nicholas, saying that Faisal and his diving team were stuck in a pipe at work. But it hasn't been long, and that not to worry, that, quote, we will get them out. It was all okay. Just a mishap at work. Hours later, family members gathered at a parking lot in PARIA's compound, waiting on news of Faisal's whereabouts. Within 2 hours, family members of the other divers came to the parking lot, awaiting news as well. They heard no more news. However, all the family members knew that so many people were on site, including Faisal's other son Michael and Nicholas, who are experienced in the diving field, among people who work with Faisal on a day-to-day basis, his colleagues, his friends. So there was hope. There was hope for hours. All the family members expected that the divers were being helped and they would be rescued and everything would be fine. Until around 8 p.m. when Michael called from on site, saying that things weren't looking good. Despite that call, Celicia had all hope that her husband would be okay. Utmost faith that he and his friends would come out of the pipe alive, just that it would take a little more time. She believed that all hands were on deck given the gravity of the situation, and that because of that, there was no way the divers wouldn't be rescued. All family members were waiting in the car park, expecting to see the divers alive as soon as they had been rescued. Faisal had gone to work on similar jobs over the span of more than 30 years and had come back home safely, every time. So it was very easy to hold on to hope. Most of the days on Saturday, Sunday and Monday was spent at the PARIA car park as well. The media was present every day, getting the story out to the public, which we appreciated. Many rights activists helped as well in getting the story out there, and it showed when members of the public and friends brought food, drinks, shelter, and lights, and many donations from various other local businesses offering assistance in any way they can. Whether that be anything they needed, waiting in a car park, or for reaching out for help for the men stuck in any way they could. This effort from friends, family members, bystanders, and members of the public continued until Monday evening. There was a meeting with PARIA on Saturday where they told us they were trying their best. After that, PARIA communicated periodically with Faisal's family via WhatsApp, but the communication was sparse and vague and not very helpful. If it weren't for personal communication with LMCS workers, they would not have been privy to any updates. The only times they heard from PARIA after that were the official statements that were issued for the public, which was not enough. They expected more communication and help from PARIA, but it was not given. After the news on the 28th, all came crashing down. Their lives changed forever. We lost Faisal. All the good times became just memories. He was a family man. His family was the most important thing to him. Everything he did was for his family, and his family is who they are because of him. We owe everything to him. He loved us, and we continue to love him. He always knew how to have a good time. He is missed every day, especially during the recent Christmas season, which was without much joy or happiness, but passed with an air of sadness. Many acts of kindness and donations were offered to us during the season from members of the public and local companies. However, it should be noted that PARIA has made no such effort. Just after the Christmas season came, what would have been Faisal's and Salisha's 34th wedding anniversary, which was a day of heartache and grief for Salisha, and later this month would have been his birthday, which will be a day full of rose spirits for his family. Without the tremendous support from her family members, especially Salisha's brothers and sisters, from the hours waiting in the car park to present day, she would not have been able to cope as well as she has thus far. His family will not rest until justice is served. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, that is all the evidence from the victims that we will hear, victims' families that we'll hear today. Maybe all, we'll see. In the interim, we have evidence, I think, from Dr. Chetty. Yes, thank you very much. And is he ready and available to give evidence now? Thank you. Yes, his statement is at 3232, and I think given the shortness of time, we've not been able to do a full summary of his evidence, but we're going to, I think, is it you, Mr. Bissessar? Right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is he being allowed to give evidence and return for cross-examination? Because speaking for myself, I have not been able to read his statement far more to digest it.
Well, just a moment, Mr. Chetty. Take a seat, would you? Yes, thank you. I indicated this morning that we had received this on Friday, and I made clear that we were concerned about this evidence being provided late. I did invite anyone to express any objection to his evidence being given this afternoon, which I had indicated we were going to seek to do. I've had no objection up until now, Mr. Peterson. I mean, we are struggling under the same, or labouring under the same time constraints as have you. And I do understand that it has been served extremely late. Nonetheless, I took the view with the team that this was important evidence that needed to be heard before this commission.
Well, yes, sir, I could not even make that determination, but what I thought, why I did not object earlier, is that he would be called, so we use up some of the time this afternoon instead of losing all of it, and we tag him on to Incotech tomorrow, so we finish all the evidence tomorrow. So I did not think it was prudent.
Are you asking for time to the extent that you would wish to reserve your position until tomorrow?
Yes, sir, but I'm not objecting. That's the point I'm making. I'm not objecting to him being called,
Well,
so we could use up the time we have today.
Let me ask, since he is here, if Mr. Chetty, do you, forgive me, Dr. Chetty, are you available tomorrow morning? You are? Well, that I think will then take care of your particular issue, Mr. Peterson. I understand it. Let me say straight away, I'm just slightly disappointed that you didn't express this earlier, because we could have made separate arrangements for that. Be that as it may, I think that it makes some sense for you to be able to reserve your cross-examination, if you have any, till tomorrow morning. Mr. Chetty, Dr. Chetty is available tomorrow morning, so that's what we'll do. What I will ask, though, is I think we were scheduled tomorrow morning to start at 10, were we? Or 10:30?
9:30 tomorrow and 11 on Wednesday.
Sorry, just me.
Somebody said 10?
I think we were
Better,
10.
yeah? Oh, better.
I think we were 10, but we will be now 9:30 to give you that extra bit of time. Is everybody else in a position to be able to ask Dr. Chetty such questions that they might feel is necessary today? Good. Well, that's what we will do then. You'll go last, and you can go tomorrow morning at 9:30. Dr. Chetty, would you mind then taking the oath, please?
I, Glenn Chetty,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that the evidence
that the evidence
that I shall give
to
this commission
in this case
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and
nothing but the truth.
nothing but the truth.
Right, please take a seat, and perhaps a bottle of water can be provided for. It is Doctor, is it?
Yes.
Well, Dr. Chetty, thank you for coming. What's going to happen next is Miss Maharaj, who sits opposite you, is going to not summarise your statement, because we've not had it long enough to undertake that task. So what she's going to do is to read what we regard as being the salient aspects of your statement, or the paragraphs that represent the salient aspects, but the whole of your statement is available for everybody. It has already been made available for everybody. So please listen to those extracts that are read to us all, and then at the conclusion of that, Mr. Maharaj, who sits next to her, will ask you a few questions, all right, and we'll proceed in that way, reserving your final part of your evidence till tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you very much indeed. So, Ms. Maharaj, if you just help us with those extracts.
Thank you. Mr. Chetty's Dr. Chetty's witness statement is dated the 6th of January 2022, and it's at page 3232 of the supplemental witness statement bundle. At paragraph 1, he says, I have over 30 years experience as a dive professional and have been involved in the diving industry in the Caribbean, Canada, England, and the United States of America. I am now a retired commercial diving instructor and Association of Diving Contractors Incorporated commercial diving supervisor. I have over 100 logged hours of commercial diving and over 3,000 hours as a scuba diver. I have trained and certified hundreds of persons in the areas of scuba diving, commercial diving, and underwater welding. And he sets out his certifications in that paragraph.
Thank you.
At paragraph 2, he states that he is also the managing director of Underwater Works Incorporated Limited. Between the years 2009 to 2018, UWIL, through me, offered training to persons who were desirous of becoming qualified commercial divers. Upon the completion of the course of study and required training at UWIL, the said persons were certified as commercial divers. At present, UWIL provides training and certification for persons who wish to acquire Professional Association of Diving Instructors, PADI, scuba diving certifications and recreational diving. At paragraphs 5 to 10 of his witness statement, Dr. Chady sets out his involvement on the 25th of February 2022 with respect to the incident, and he states as follows. At around 45 hours on the 25th February, I received a call from Mr. Rolf Seals. Mr. Seals was one of my commercial diving students, and I knew that he worked for Heritage. He informed me that 4 divers were sucked into a pipeline operated by PARIA. I asked who those divers were and heard 2 names I was familiar with as being my former students. These persons were Faisal Kurban and Rishi Nagasa. Both Mr. Kurban and Mr. Nagasa were trained as commercial divers by UWIL. I immediately inquired from Mr. Seals as to whether the divers were on scuba equipment, and he responded in the affirmative. I told Mr. Seals that the divers ought not to have used scuba equipment for commercial diving operations. I asked Mr. Seals as to the nature of his call. Mr. Seals informed me that he was contacting me with respect to my ROV, remotely operated vehicle, with underwater camera system, and asked whether I could utilize same for the purposes of finding the missing divers. I asked Mr. Seals what the diameter of the pipeline was, and upon learning same, I advised Mr. Seals that my ROV was 36 inches wide with cameras and other accessories, and therefore would not fit into the pipeline. I further informed Mr. Seals that my ROV had only arrived 2 days prior and was not yet completely assembled. I further informed Mr. Seals that I remained available to help and assist with respect to the rescue of the divers. Mr. Seals responded, stating that he would let me know. I then told Mr. Seals that an air umbilical ought to be inserted into the pipeline as soon as possible in order to assist the trapped divers who may be able to reach steam. During the course of Mr. Seals' commercial diving training at UWIL, he would have received training with respect to the rescue of divers and penetration diving. I am unaware as to whether such training was utilized with respect to this incident. Further, as part of the commercial training received by Mr. Kurban and Mr. Nagasa at UWIL, they ought to have known that the use of scuba equipment for commercial diving operations is discouraged and inherently dangerous. We train our divers not to use scuba for such operations. At paragraphs 11 to 14 of his witness statement, Dr. Chady sets out the responsibilities of the client and the contractor with respect to the tendering and evaluation for commercial diving operations. At paragraph 14, he says, a dive contractor must ensure the safety of its divers, and it is the first responder in the event of an emergency occurring during an operation. A dive contractor must always be ready to implement its emergency response plan. In such cases where further divers are required, the dive contractor must be able to identify such personnel and arrange for such personnel to attend on site as soon as possible. At paragraph 13, he states, the client is not expected to have the expertise to execute the required job. In evaluating a tender, the client is required to be assisted by technical personnel in the area and an independent qualified dive superintendent, supervisor, or if available, a diving client representative. No more than one diving superintendent is required for the purposes of evaluating the risk assessments, job safety analysis, and emergency response plans submitted by the contractor. The dive superintendent also verifies the contractor divers' current qualifications, divers' names, divers' current fit to drive, divers' oxygen current certification, divers' logbooks, and the equipment that the contractor intends to use to complete the job safely. The dive superintendent must therefore have knowledge of the relevant diving standards, planning and execution of surface diving projects, including the responsibility for the safety and health of the dive team. She should have a dive-in supervisor qualification and be able to assist and advise other dive-in supervisors. 2, have a thorough knowledge of the system and relevant equipment, including related operational and emergency procedures. And 3, have sound knowledge of the dive-in management system and relevant manuals needed on site specific, on the job site specific for dive safety. At paragraph 14, he stated, the dive superintendent is required to attend the finalization of risk assessments and job safety analysis meetings of the contractor prior to the execution of the job and must be present during the execution of the job. The dive superintendent is specifically working on the client's behalf to ensure the contractor is adhering strictly to its duties. At paragraphs 15 to 30 of his witness statement, Dr. Chetty sets out in detail the reasons for his views that the job on the 25th of February ought to have been done utilizing commercial diving equipment and not scuba. At paragraph 15, he says, the job on the 25th February involved commercial diving with respect to repairs to an oil pipeline. The job required commercial divers utilizing commercial diving equipment and not scuba equipment. The contractor for this job was LMCS and the client was PARIA. Paragraph 16, he stated, from my review of documents filed before this commission, Mr. Coburn and Mr. Nagasar were trained as commercial divers by UWIL and acquired commercial diver certification. At my request, searches were made of the membership register of the Professional Association of Diving Instructors by my son, Nikolai Chedi, who is a PADI master instructor. From those searches, he was able to confirm that Mr. Christopher Budram and Mr. Kazim Ali Jr. were certified as scuba divers by PADI. With respect to Yusuf Henry, Mr. Henry commenced training for PADI scuba certification in August 2021 and attended one session. He did not return thereafter and did not complete the course of training. Mr. Henry is not PADI certified and his name does not appear on the PADI membership register. On the issue of a possible rescue operation, Dr. Chetty gives the following evidence from paragraph 35 onwards. When the divers became trapped inside the pipeline at Boot 6, the best time to attempt a rescue would have been on 25th February with the use of commercial divers and commercial diving equipment. From my reading of the witness statements, a rescue operation was feasible and could have been undertaken on the 25th February. There were suitably qualified divers who could have served as members of the dive team once they were willing to do so, namely and in the following capacities. 1, Conan Bido, diver entering into the pipeline. 2, Corey McCrawford, in-water tender and standby diver. 3, Conrad Bido, topside standby diver. 4, Ronald Ramatar, topside dive tender. And 5, Michael Kerban, topside dive tender. Dive supervisors would have been available from the 2 dive vessels, Gulfstream Eagle and Waterworld, which were on site at the time. Mr. Ramatar could have served as an additional in-water tender and standby diver, and additional topside dive tenders could have been found from those on the dive vessels, namely Waterworld, operated by Subsea Global Solutions, LLC. These divers, even though they could not enter the water, could have assisted in the tendering of the divers and the setting up of the surface-supplied dive spread. There was also suitable commercial diving equipment available. There were 2 vessels with total surface-supplied diving equipment. I can attest that I have trained surface-supplied divers off the Gulfstream Eagle, a vessel operated by Offshore Technology Solutions Limited, and that the said vessel is equipped with surface-supplied equipment. I've also been on waterworks and have seen their surface-supplied equipment, which would have been suitable. To the best of my knowledge, divers attached to the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard would not have been trained, qualified, or able to conduct penetration diving within a pipeline. Mr. Michael Kerban and Mr. Andrew Farah, at least by the time of the arrival of the other commercial divers, would not have been permitted to act as divers or dive supervisors, with respect to the rescue operation. They would have been traumatized at the time, and penetration diving requires divers without added stress. Preventing Mr. Michael Coburn from entering the pipe using the dive hooker was correct. A dive hooker was not made for penetration diving, and the condition of the hooker topside compressor, together with its capacity to provide adequate air to specific depths to the diver within the pipe, was unknown at the time. A penetration dive must be continuously risk assessed. A risk assessment, including mitigation measures, ought not to have taken longer than 30 minutes, and it would have been possible to generate a plan within that time frame. The risk assessment through this job safety analysis is not meant to be overly detailed and should be kept to short sentences. The risk assessment would have included the personnel involved, the gas volume requirement for the air to be supplied, the lengths of continuous umbilical available, U.S. Navy dive tables, on-call hyperbaric facility, medical hyperbaric doctor on-call, potential hazards within the pipeline, failure of the diving equipment, changes in water conditions within the pipeline, matters which would lead to the abandonment of the rescue. The plan to conduct a rescue in the event that the rescue diver became trapped or otherwise failed to keep continuous communication with the dive supervisor. And the entry, this would be feet first. The hindrance would be that the surface supplied diver will have to crawl backwards until he reaches the first diver. However, this helps as now he can grab the diver and attempt to get air to him or have topside pull both up to the surface face front. At paragraph 43, he states, it could have been deduced that there existed no unmovable blockages between the entrance of the pipeline and the location of the divers within the pipeline by the fact that Mr. Budram was able to make his way to the top of berth 6. Mr. Budram did so notwithstanding that he nursed injuries, and a suitable commercial diver would be certainly able to navigate the conditions within the pipeline. Mr. Coburn was also able to make his way a few feet past the elbow of the pipeline and make his return to the top of berth 6. At paragraph 47, he stated, the final call to perform the penetration dive would have been with the expert divers, and the call to abandon the dive once started would be with the rescue diver or the dive supervisor. Upon arriving at the location of each trap diver, the rescue diver would provide a breathing apparatus in the form of an extra umbilical with mask attached, or a small bailout bottle with a mask and regulator attached to the trap diver and retrieve the diver. The dive tenders would pull the rescue diver and trap diver out of the pipeline. This process would be repeated until all divers were rescued. In the event that the trap divers were unresponsive, the rescue diver has the call to attempt to remove him or abandon the dive. With respect to the possibility of a Delta P incident during the rescue, the best conditions to effect a rescue would have been on Friday or the early morning hours of Saturday morning. In any event, commercial divers are trained to deal with and mitigate against the possibility of a Delta P incident. He then refers to section 517 of the ADCI manual.
Before you move on, would you read paragraph 46, please?
Yes. In light of the information provided by Mr. Budram and Mr. Coburn, and the competency of the commercial divers available, awaiting the arrival of a camera boroscope or ROV, would have been wasting precious time on conditions which were already permissible for a rescue. The use of a ROV camera is a mitigating measure, but it is not compulsory. The rescue diver would have been equipped with a camera in any event as part of his umbilical and would have provided live video feed to the dive supervisor. And then at paragraphs 50 to 53, Dr. Chetty refers to the Code of Practice for Safety in Commercial Diving Operations, and he states as follows. I was a member of the committee appointed to review the Code of Practice for Safety in Commercial Diving Operations. This standard is outdated, inadequate, and not in line with the international standard on commercial diving. A new standard was drafted a new standard was drafted by the Trinidad and Tobago, being the Trinidad and Tobago Standard Commercial Diving Operations Requirements for Safety. I believe that had the draft standard been mandatory, the tragic deaths of Mr. Ali, Mr. Nagasar, Mr. Kuban, and Mr. Henry could have been avoided. Clause 5.1.12 of the draft standard would have prohibited the use of scuba for this operation and would have, in any event, required the divers to be tethered. Clause 5.1.1.3 of the draft standard would have prohibited the use of divers in commercial diving operations who was certified by a recreational diving agency. The ADCI manual recognized PADI as one such recreational agency. Dr. Chedi, do you agree with what I've just read out as representing a true and correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
It clearly isn't everything. Obviously, it's selected paragraphs.
Yeah, I saw so.
But as I indicated earlier, the entirety of your statement has been placed before everyone, and they have had an opportunity to consider it. So anybody who wants to ask you anything about any part of it, they've been allowed to do just that. All right. So Mr. Maharaj, now who is counsel representing the Commission, is going to ask you some questions.
Good afternoon, Dr. Chedi.
Good afternoon.
I just want to ask you a few questions. You mentioned at paragraph 36 the name Conan Bedo. Do you know Conan Bedo?
No, I don't know him personally.
But you know of his...
I know of him and of his diving capabilities.
And how would you describe him? What are his, as far as you're concerned, his qualifications and experience?
Excellent. I have. He is a certified commercial diver, and from what I understand, he did start diving, and I have heard about him in the industry itself.
In the industry. Mm-hmm. Corey Mark Crawford is another name you mentioned. Do you know that person or of that person?
Yeah, I trained Corey many years ago, and he was very comfortable as a diver during the training process. And I know he went abroad and did some diving, I think it was in South Africa or somewhere. And yes, I know him as a competent diver as well.
And then the third name you mentioned was Conrad Bedo. What about him?
No, I don't know Conrad Bedo. I just, again, heard about him as well, that he was an ADCI certified diver.
ADCI. Ronald Ramuta.
I trained Ronald, and again, same like Corey, very competent divers. So I would recommend him to be there as part of that.
Michael Kurban.
Of course, I trained Michael as well. And he has always been a strong diver as well. So, yes.
So, from your witness statement, am I to take it that if PARIA had discussions with these persons who were on site or who were available, a rescue plan could have been devised?
Well, they would also have to have a supervisor there, not these guys alone. A diving supervisor, certified diving supervisor, would have to have been present for a dive plan to be completed.
For a dive plan?
Yes, sir.
And a dive supervisor, do you know whether there was any such person available?
Yes, what I have there as well too, in the two diving vessels that were present at the time, there were diving supervisors present. So they could have chatted with those guys there as well.
Who were they?
PARIA, or whoever was trying to get the plan done.
No. Who were the two persons?
I don't know. I can't remember the name. I don't know if one was Paul. I can't remember the other one's name. But I know that they had divers, supervisors present.
Since you're coming back tomorrow, would you be able to look at the records and see?
I can.
So you could help us who are those two names?
Yeah, I can find out those two divers.
Now, you have been, you said that, well, let me put it this way. You are available in Trinidad to be retained to get advice in the diving industry in respect of diving?
Yeah, other companies have also asked me for advice.
Could you tell us some of the companies that have sought your advice?
In Trinidad?
Yes.
I know that Atlantic had called, but that was it at one point. PARIA never did, LMCS never did. Smaller companies, one working for Heritage. The names I can't remember totally, but they had called me for advice, and that's new companies after Petrotrin had closed down. And there was another company working with Heritage as well. Okay. Most of these companies know me because I have students, who train for me, so they came to me.
I'm asking you that because the question I want to ask you is that if PARIA had contacted you on the 25th of February, when this incident occurred, would you have been available to give advice or to be retained by PARIA to give advice?
I would have given them advice. Yeah. Anyone who had called me would always get advice. Yes, sir.
In your witness statement at paragraph 45, you mentioned that Mr. Budram further indicated that he felt 2 well seams within the pipeline while navigating his way through. And you mentioned that this is a method of determining distance within the pipeline. Could you help us to explain that?
Yes, and I continue there with ship husbandry. Ship husbandry basically is working underneath ships where divers would clean the bottom of ships that don't have access easily to the surface. I'm talking about huge ships. And I have heard from divers. I have never worked underneath one of these ships, but speaking to a lot of these divers, and during the draft standards, we found out that divers who would lose their directions in which direction they can get out from under the ship would usually follow the seams, and they would know the distance or the direction in which to go. So when I heard about the seams in the pipeline, it was simple that you can work out, these divers are accustomed feeling these seams, and they could know the distance between, work it out, and the direction in which it goes.
Okay, at paragraph 1 of your witness statement, you gave us a list of companies or organizations which you were associated with. Could you tell us whether the Canadian Association of Diving Contractors, CADC, was any one of those associations you were associated with?
The DCBC, I had, that's the Diver Certification Board of Canada. I can't remember the exact year over here, but that's many years ago. When I was doing my dive supervisor course in Canada, I visited Working Divers with Gord Hay, that's the owner, and he introduced me to the standards, the DCBC standards, where I sat there on 2 occasions learning about standards and also contributing. So at that point, I had learned a lot from the experts in the field as well.
Right. Okay. So you're no longer associated with that organization?
Oh, no.
At paragraph 49, in which you stated that, in which you dealt with the possibility of a Delta P incident, do you, well, and you refer to certain literature on it. Could you explain basically what that literature stated?
Right. What I quoted there was the I.A.N manual. Now, we were certifying in Trinidad under the ADCI, that's the Association of Diving Contractors International. So our school would follow, of course, that manual itself. And we trained everything according to the manual. Delta P was listed as part of the manual, and all of our students were introduced to this section, and we'd read about it and study it as well to understand what Delta P is.
So when you
I
said...
wonder if we could have the next page of his statement on the screen, please, because I think there you quote paragraph 5.17, I assume from the ADCI
Yes, sir.
manual to which you've been referring. And can we see there it set out what it is that you say it instructs?
That is the example of 5.517.2 examples of Delta P. That's what you're looking at?
No, I was looking at 5.17, an explanation, first of all, of
yes.
what differential pressure is, delta P. It's written there, delta, as opposed to using the Greek symbol delta, but delta P anyway. A significant number of fatalities in the diving industry involve a differential pressure, delta P situation. Delta P is particularly insidious hazard for several reasons and sets out what they are.
Yes, sir.
Rather than you reading them, let me. Delta P is invisible to a diver and strikes suddenly without warning.
Quite true.
You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Once entrapped by delta P, there is almost no way to escape.
Correct.
If the velocity profile of a hazard is such that at the periphery, the diver may approach without any perceptible increase in the water flow velocity, by the time the diver can feel the water flow velocity, it is already at a dangerous level.
Correct.
In other words, he may be sucked to it.
Yeah. Quickly.
Without being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Even small forces may be compounded by factors such as the immobilization of limbs or the geometry of the structure surrounding the delta P hazard.
Correct.
And then the application of as little as 77 pounds of force on the torso can impair respiration and disrupt blood flow. A diver's chest, back or abdomen trapped against a 9-inch by 9-inch opening with a delta P of only 1 psi, that is less than 2.5 feet of water head, would experience 81 pounds of force.
That is true.
So just so that we can picture that in our minds. A 9-inch opening, let's say a 9-inch pipe, what about this? Something like that, yes? Circle, around 9 inches. That size opening with a delta P of only 1 psi, 1 psi pressure. What is the average tire on a car pressure?
Oh, 26.
That sort of stuff, right. So we're just one.
That example, if I may come to you, is like we use that for even swimming pools.
Right.
Right, where the intake is at the bottom of the pool. There's been, that's a delta P situation right there that has trapped divers or people cleaning the pool if the covering isn't there. And how it works is that if the pump cuts off, or whatever is happening with the pump, it sucks the person in. So that's only that size, and we're talking about a swimming pool.
There are people who've been known to die at the bottom of a swimming pool.
Correct.
Cleaning the filter at the bottom of the pool.
That's simple intake.
Right. And somebody with just a snorkel, perhaps going down 10 feet just to clean the bottom of the pool. Sucked to the surface, sucked to it, stuck there, can't move.
Yes.
Relatively small amount of pressure.
Correct.
That's how powerful it is.
Powerful delta P is.
And so you explain that, do you, to your students?
Oh yeah, and I also showed them the ADCI video, not only with the one with the crab, I think which everybody is speaking about, but there are a number of videos that ADCI has on delta P.
We've
and
seen
all my students run through that.
We've seen
some. Okay.
All right, lovely. Thank you, Mr. Mahmoud.
And that explains, Dr. Shea, if you look on the recommendations on 5.173.
Yes, sir.
You see, it says, it is therefore important in your view, for if works have to be done, hazardous works, that steps are taken to identify potential delta P situation.
Of course, and it's not hard to identify delta
And
P.
if you notice at recommendations, attend a pre-job meeting to understand where the hazards may be. You see, that's one of the recommendations.
Yes, sir.
The third one, understand where the potential for delta P may exist. And then 2 points down, make sure the diver and supervisor know how the piping and the valve systems work together.
Valve.
Valve system works together.
Yes, I mean, in that regard, the third head of that describes understand where potential for delta P may exist. When dealing with pipelines, is there always a danger for delta P?
Yes, always. Anytime you're around pipelines.
I mean, the little knowledge that I've gained in the time that I've been involved in this, it seems to me that it is almost a red flag for delta P if there is pipes involved.
Correct.
And even if you're able to dismiss the prospect in a particular case, you have to consider it as an issue before dismissing it, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
I have no further questions.
I might have a couple myself first. Yes, I wanted to ask you about something, because it's not really reared its head very much in these hearings, but it seemed to me something as a layperson that might have been considered. If you turn to your paragraph 8 of your statement, please. You all right reading it on the screen, or would you prefer
I can
to
read
turn-
that. It's
Yes, all
comfortable.
right. You say this, I further informed Mr. Seals that I remained available to help and assist with respect to the rescue of the divers. Mr. Seals responded stating that he would let me know, pausing there for a moment. Now, Mr. Seals knew you, you knew him because you trained him.
Yes.
Right. Were you called upon at any stage by Mr. Seals or anyone else to lend assistance?
No.
Right. You then went on to say this. I then told Mr. Seals that an air umbilical ought to be inserted into the pipeline as soon as possible in order to assist the trapped divers who may be able to reach sane.
Yes.
Right? Now, I'm envisaging you're putting a piece of pipe down there with a
Hose.
a hose with, I mean, you don't literally mean just an empty piece of hose, do you?
No.
Do you mean with breathing apparatus on the end?
No. What I told him to do was send that umbilical, which is the hose,
Yeah.
down into the pipe. Just send it down, and you open the air. It's something what we have in diving called a Nemo hose, a Nemo fathometer hose, which shows the depth. It always has air in it. Water would not get into it. So we can send that hose down and send it.
Is it pumping air out?
Yes.
Right, so unlike on that tank that we have in front with the mouthpiece, the regulator on the front, you see it on the floor
Yes,
there in
sir.
front of you, that's got a regulator on it that you have to put into your mouth and start breathing before it operates. And
Yeah, but you have to hold that with your teeth.
you have to put it in your mouth, hold with your teeth and
Yeah.
start breathing, right?
And pull.
I understand that. But what you're suggesting is putting down a hose which has got air continuously flowing out. You
Yeah.
don't have to breathe, you have to put it in your mouth, don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
right?
that's for the initial stage. Just send it down.
Just send it down, right.
yeah.
Did you have when you made that suggestion to Mr. Seals, did you first of all appreciate how far down the vertical it was before it went along in the horizontal, or did you have any idea about that?
No, I just say send it down.
Right. So your view at that stage, at a very early stage, and
Yes.
ignorant perhaps of much of the facts, was, well, just send some air down there.
Yeah, just send it down. If guys are trapped anywhere underwater, anywhere, just send it down. One may hold it and put it in his mouth.
Well, somebody might, if they
Yeah.
were down there, they might have actually grabbed hold of it.
Yeah, and these are two guys who I knew were commercial divers. So, of course, they're going to see umbilical in their face, you know.
At the time when you were making that suggestion, were you aware, for example, that there was any potential for air pockets in the pipe itself?
No.
So you had no idea
No.
whether there was any
No.
such air pockets in there, or where they might be, obviously.
No.
Right. But you thought that that might help at least.
If you're going to send it down there, one might feel it, may see air bubbles coming out. I don't know. It was just a suggestion I made at that time.
No,
of the
I
night.
follow. I mean, to the layperson, seems like a sensible thing to do. I just wondered whether or not there was any hazard involved in doing that.
I don't think there would have been a hazard.
You didn't envisage it. If somebody had suggested to you that there was a potential for a latent delta P to still exist in the pipeline, would sending a piece of tube with air in it like that affect that?
No, it wouldn't affect it. The only way that would have had a second delta P would occur is because it was going to be done through the habitat. You remember the habitat was now, it had air in the habitat again.
Pushing air down to the pipe.
If that had cut off again, the water would have started up a second time back into the pipe.
So
And that would have
removing the habitat was not a good idea.
removing the habitat, but having it flooded with water, it's a whole lot of stuff that you had to take into consideration. Removing the habitat was a good idea. Yeah, it was a good idea. Just get rid of that habitat from there. Because it would have, if the divers, from what I understood, they would have had, the guys who were diving to try to get back into the pipe after Budram came out, it had air in there. What if that air, that compressor had stopped again? The water would have risen again and back into the pipe again. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Let me see if I can understand the position. You know, don't you, that that what caused this was a delta P?
Delta P.
Right. What preceded the delta P was the removal of plugs in a pipeline.
Correct.
Right? The removal of the plugs in the pipeline were being removed in circumstances where the habitat over the end of the pipeline was applying a certain amount of pressure to that pipe.
Correct.
Well, not to the contents of the pipe, obviously. It was applying that pressure within the habitat, pushing the water down.
Water down,
right.
correct.
Once the plugs had been removed, or the first plug removed and the other one sucked in to the pipe and then stopped somewhere in it, once that had happened, the pressure from the habitat returned everything back to normal, even though there was no longer a plug at the surface. It was down the pipe somewhere. Created a sort of equilibrium, didn't it?
Yeah, but remove that air now. What was the job of the air? The air inside of the pipe was to keep the water down.
Yes.
Remove that for the second time. On a second occasion,
Yes.
water would rise again.
No. I
I'm
follow
talking about
that.
the second delta P.
I do
If
follow that.
delta
I
P.
do follow
Okay.
that. What I'm trying, and it's me, I'm sure, not understanding your answer, but the position in the pipe, whether there was a further chance of a second delta P or not, was at least stable at that moment in time.
Correct. It was stable at that time.
It's stable, right? And we've heard some evidence, and it seems to be the case, that something would have to happen to trigger a second delta P, even if that existed within the pipe, all right?
Yes,
Something would have
that's
to happen to affect that stable condition.
Correct.
Right? What I'm asking you, I suppose, is this, is that at the time when we have this stable condition, you've got whatever PSI there is within this habitat pushing down on the pipe and the contents of the pipe between where it's open and where the plug has ended up. So whatever distance that is, the pressure is pushing down on that end. Do you follow?
Yes.
So if I stop that pressure all of a sudden, if I take that pressure away and open the pipe to just the atmosphere above, surely that is a factor which might affect the equilibrium, the stabilization of the pipe.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So removing the habitat and depressurizing that force, downward force on the pipe, might have the effect of actually creating this second delta P if it existed.
Yeah, once you, yes.
So it's not a good idea to remove the habitat then, is it?
No, it wasn't going to be to remove it. It was already there. And looking at time, it could have been to work with the habitat while it was over the pipe. You're talking about the initial, before they removed the habitat.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
talking about, I mean, we've heard some evidence about the removal of this habitat and why it was thought appropriate to do so. The pump might break down or whatever it might be.
Correct, same thing I'm
I
saying.
get all of that.
Right, good.
But I'm simply asking the question, you as the expert in the field can help me understand that the removal of that habitat might of itself have created that secondary delta P if one existed within the pipeline.
Yes.
Because you're taking one of the forces
Yes, it
that
would.
exists away,
Yes.
aren't you? There is, whatever the PSI is, it doesn't matter for our purpose of our argument, but if there's a force, a downward force on the open end of the pipe, and you stop that, that changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Anything
Must
that
do.
would affect the dynamics here
Yeah.
could cause,
Right.
well, a delta P.
So the best thing to do, from what I can see at the moment, is to keep it as it is.
Yes.
Is that not right?
That's fine, yeah, we could, yeah.
I look to my colleague, Mr. Wilson, to disagree with me if I've got it right. But I think that's my way of thinking
Leave it
about
as
the
is.
matter. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Equally, would you agree that because we know this U-bend at the other end, at berth 5, had a cap, a sealed cap on it, right, sealing it off at that end, that also provided for a degree of the stabilization, didn't it, of the
Right.
existing pipe?
Yes.
So if I open that end, it's not such a good idea either,
No,
is it?
No, no. That has to stay on.
So the net result is both things that were actually done might have actually made it worse rather than better. Because we know that that cap was taken off eventually, but before that, the habitat was removed. A new piece of pipe put on.
Installed.
So that it went above the water line. That was fitted on. That was what was originally going to be done had this tragedy not occurred. So they put this new pipe on and then took the habitat away.
Yeah, and then the water would have equalized at that part. And then any air pockets in the pipe could have moved.
In other words, anybody who was breathing air in an air pocket inside the pipe might have lost that air.
Correct. It would have, yeah, it would
And
have
drowned.
moved. Yeah. Once you shifted anything there.
Well, that's what I thought. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Look, thank you very much for that. Let me just check if there's anything else I wanted to ask you. Oh, yes. Paragraph 13 of your statement, if we can pull that up, please. Thank you. Yes, here you're saying this. The client is not expected to have the expertise to execute the required job. Now, the client here is PARIA, isn't it? That's who you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Right. So they're not expected, as they've been at pains to make clear during the course of this inquiry, to be able to carry out the work themselves or even have a deep understanding of the work. And their case is really that, look, we employ these experts, LMCS, to do the job because they're the ones who are expert in the field. Do you follow?
Correct,
So,
yeah.
And you seem to agree with that.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that.
So I want to ask you in the next bit. It says, in evaluating a tender, the client is required to be assisted by technical personnel in the area and an independent qualified dive superintendent or, if available, a diving client representative. Now, pausing there, is what you're saying about that given that PARIA don't have the expertise themselves, that what they would be what they should do, or the prudent thing to do, would be to employ somebody independent to do that job for them, the assessment. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that, and that's why it's not just about PARIA, it's about all clients who get involved with the diving business.
No, I follow that.
I know.
But I mean, I'm
Must
concerned
have a
with this
diving.
case, right?
Yeah. In this case, yes, must, and they should have
Given-
had someone.
Given that they are saying their case is, this is expert work, which we do not know anything. It's not
Correct.
what we do. We know nothing about this. Experts are employed to do the job.
Correct.
And in effect, they've been saying that the expert must police themselves, all right? That's what they're saying.
When you say police themselves.
Well, in that they are to make the risk assessments and then judge whether that risk assessment is enough. themselves
and
because
be on the
PARIA
site.
don't have the expertise to do it.
And be on the site 24 hours per se. Yeah.
Supervise
No
it all themselves, do it all themselves,
Correct.
all right? But what I think you're saying here is that in evaluating the tender, the client, that is PARIA, should actually get somebody, because they can't do it, get somebody else to do it.
Correct.
The assessing. Because you go on to say no more than one diving superintendent is required for the purposes of evaluating the risk assessment, job safety analysis and emergency response plan, right? Am I to understand that what you're saying is, look, the prudent and sensible thing here is for PARIA, given their limited knowledge of this expert work, to employ someone else to look at what LMCS were going to do and say, well, yeah, your risk assessments work, your job safety analysis is good, and your emergency response plan is good.
Correct.
We're fine with that.
That's what they needed.
To say, no, they're not, right?
And
Whatever it
stop
might
the
be.
job immediately.
Yes, exactly. So they would look at those things, make an assessment of, value judge what they've done, what LMCS have done, and then say, yes, it's good or no, it isn't, and then be on site to be the, as it were, the eyes for the client.
Correct.
Obviously, that involves expense, doesn't it?
Well, yes.
All right. You finished that off in your paragraph 14. At the end of paragraph 14, you say the dive superintendent, this is this independent person, is specifically working on the client's behalf, on PARIA's behalf, to ensure the contractor is adhering strictly to its duties.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right. Would you be kind enough to put up, please, page 12 of the 26, or 3243? Do you see there, you've given some illustration of the kind of headgear that the divers ought to have been wearing, as I understand it, whilst working inside the habitat?
Yes.
And you give these examples. This is figure 1. This is something called a Kirby Morgan Surface Supplied MOD 1 full-face diving mask. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Look like a spaceman or something.
Correct.
That is a much lighter arrangement than the yellow one that my learned.
This is just about 2 pounds.
Weighs 2 pounds.
Yeah, about that.
So it's something you can work with.
Yeah. This is what you need to use in the habitat.
Right. Ought to have been using.
Ought to have been using.
So anybody in that habitat carrying out this sort of work ought to have been wearing something like that. I think there's another one, a Kirby Morgan band mask.
The band mask, yeah, but that's a little heavier. That's about 12 pounds.
That's quite a bit heavier, is it?
Yeah, but for these guys who work in there, I don't think it would be a problem for them. But those are about the lightest ones, and what is
Well,
recommended.
I'm just thinking about it, you know. I mean, wearing 12 pounds on your head, bending down, looking into a pipe, might not be the most comfortable position
That's why
to
I
be in for
recommend
very
this
long,
one.
is it? You might be able to do it for 10 minutes or even half an hour.
Very true.
But I mean, carrying 12-pound additional weight on your head bending forward is...
But that's why I recommended this one. And
This one.
We have a lot of light ones, about 3-4 pounds as well, the
Right.
EXO band mask. It's not like if just you're limited to just one. There's a wide range of full-face surface
this is
supply
just an
diving
example.
masks. This is just
I
one.
get it, it's just an
Yeah.
example. All right. All right. But anyway, that would provide some sort of protection.
Of course.
Yeah. Next, can I ask you this? If you go to figure 2, please. That's it. Yeah, this is some sort of a harness that can be worn. I think.
This is a 6-point.
Where is it? This is a what?
A 6-point harness.
Right. I'm not going to try it on before anybody says anything. All right? But this is the sort of thing, is it?
Yes. Yes.
That's
No, I
the
understand,
top.
yeah.
All right, okay, yeah. So you climb into
But
it,
the
this
thing
either
that-
side of your
yeah, but
buttocks, as it were.
It's not
yeah.
just that alone. You have to have a place in the back of it like this one. If you look at the pit here, you will see that there's a hard piece in the back of it
Right.
where
Across
the
here.
bailout bottle is attached to this. But the divers in the habitat can use this and have a small bailout bottle with them.
So something like that,
That's fine.
if the divers were wearing something like that, clipped on
Yeah.
to the habitat?
Not the habitat, they'll be clipped onto the surface. The umbilical will be running to their hip, then to the hat, but the other part of it will be attached to the surface.
Right. So basically what they'd be wearing a hat like we see in what we've
Right.
just been looking at.
And the deering it to the side.
Just a minute. They'd be wearing a wetsuit.
Yes, wetsuit.
A wetsuit, then this over the top of the wetsuit,
Correct.
right? Arms through here,
Yes,
yes, and then legs through that part,
correct.
buckled up at the front
Yes,
with this, yes, and then there'd be some sort of tether, would they, on these?
on the sides. Yeah.
On these,
Yes.
yes? What, a kind of, just the umbilical or something separate?
No, but the entire umbilical will be hooked with a carabiner on that.
On here,
Yeah, on that.
So it would
and
go
then
from
the
here
air would run.
round
to the hat.
into the person's mouth.
Well, the hat.
What, connected
Yeah.
to the hat, yes. All right. And that would all be connected to the surface.
Correct.
So if there had been the kind of delta P we're talking about, yes, and they were sucked into the, or attempted to be sucked into the pipe, they would be connected to the surface by that.
Yeah, the umbilical would be comprising of a strength member, not a piece of rope or such, but it's a strength member. And that is all wrapped around the umbilical, like the next photo you would see lower down. And
Yes,
that
the
strength
the
member
next picture,
ends here.
please. Just scroll to the next page.
Right,
Yes.
that is what you
That's
call an
umbilical's
umbilical.
coiled up, isn't it?
Yes, so that's 3 or 4 umbilicals there. One end is connected to the surface, to the air manifold system, which sends air to the diver. The strength member, which is like a rope then, a strong rope, is connected to the barge.
Made of rope or metal?
Rope.
Rope.
Everything is made of, everything there is, except for the rope, right? And everything is hose. And the communication systems and all that, and the video as well. The strength member, which is a rope, which is also wrapped in that strength member is attached to the barge or to the ship or somewhere onto the boat itself. Very short, not all long, but just short. So if it's pulled, the tender who is holding the other end, if it slips out of his hands, like it does, it's going to slip out of his hands.
There's no way he's going to hold it, no.
Right. The other end is attached to the boat. So that they may be sucked in, they may be banged up, but at least, we can
I
find them.
mean, even if it ripped itself off the cleat on the boat, it would still have an umbilical that would go into the pipe
Of
with
course,
the person.
yeah. Those umbilicals are pretty long, 300 feet, maybe 4, 5.
Right. 300 feet.
Yeah.
All right. And your view is that when you're carrying out that kind of work, that is how you should be tethered inside the...
And one important thing about the umbilical is that the umbilical must never be joined.
Never be joined?
Never be joined.
What do you mean?
What I mean by joined is that people like to connect umbilicals.
Yes.
On some of my, where I was asked to visit some of these companies, I have seen they have joined umbilicals, and that is something that is frowned upon by standards. What happened, 2 things happen, is that on force, that joining could pull.
Yeah.
So that's
Break.
the air brake right here, and you will not get air.
Done, yeah.
Okay. The second one is that the gas volume that is coming from the surface, there's a slight restriction at that point where it is joined. So the amount of air that's going to the diver will be a little less.
Right. I mean, obviously that would be in the sort of conditions where you're carrying out the work. There might be justification, can I suggest, if it's right, that you might want to join them if you were trying to effect a rescue that needed more than 300 feet.
No, I will find an umbilical.
Sorry?
I will look for an umbilical that's longer than 300 feet.
Yes,
I would
but
not
if
be
it was
comfortable
If
with
it was in
joining.
Jamaica, that wouldn't be much use to you in an emergency situation, would it?
And where? Sorry?
If the longer one was in Jamaica rather than nearby.
Oh, no, there are companies here in Trinidad that have longer ones as well.
They do?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, super. All right, thank you very much. Let me just, just make sure I haven't got anything else to ask you. I do. Yes. Paragraph 46, please. Yes, you address an issue that has been an issue we've been concerned with in this inquiry. In the light of the information provided by Mr. Boudram and Mr. Michael Kerban, and the competency of the commercial divers available, awaiting the arrival of a camera, boroscope or ROV would have been wasting precious time on conditions which were already permissible for a rescue. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Do I take it from that what you are doing is to say we have a timeline to save these people?
Correct.
And every hour that passes, that timeline is more likely to expire and therefore they will be dead.
Correct.
And so it was important, whilst it would be a really good idea to have a camera look at the inside of the pipe, if that took too long, then you have to do away with that and make an assessment without it.
Correct, because as I said, after that, the diver will have a camera on his head.
Indeed. And if he had met, as I think Mr. Ramadar suggested, a crocodile coming in the other direction, you would have been able to see it. I know it's a facetious question, but since he asked it in that way, I put it in the same way, all right? I mean, the reality is, what I'm suggesting is that once you're down, the person who's got this on his head, or wherever it is he's looking, you'll be able to see.
No, yes, but what is more important for that statement would be the supervisor would see a lot better sometimes than the diver himself. The camera is focused here on his head, right? Some of them have it here, but most of them have it here.
Pointing in
right,
which direction?
In full direction of him. It will have light and camera in one. The supervisors sitting there would be able to see a lot, sometimes more than what the diver himself
can see with his eyes, with the protector, all the other gear around his
Correct.
head. Right.
So that's basically there for the supervisor
And so
to
the
see.
supervisor could be telling him there's a crocodile coming, if that's what you want to say.
Or there's someone in front of you, or
Right.
there's something, yeah.
Yes, yes. So, and they're in communication with each other.
At all the times, especially for a dive like this, yes.
So if either vision or oral, auditory communication were lost, you could have a plan for removing the diver immediately.
Yeah, all commercial divers follow within the standard or the dive manual itself that talks about the U.S. Navy signals, where we pull. So we have one signal would mean something, two, and we just recap it before we dive. So we have the loss of communication signals.
Right, so if you lost vision and audio, you'd be able to say, right, give him 2 pulls or 1 pull or whatever it is.
It's more than 4 pulls. You will be panicking, so you're going to pull a lot, and that's enough to take you out.
Get me out, yeah. Right. I think that's all I need to ask you, Doctor. Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, I think has a question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chedi. I just want to go back to figure 3, where you were showing the different types of hats, and I want to ask you something for clarification.
Figure 3?
Yeah, with the different
umbilicals.
That's umbilical. Well, just higher up.
Which
with
one?
With the hats. With the
You're looking at the masks, are you?
That's one.
Yeah, this is the 2 of those are
Right.
figure 1. Right?
Just higher up. Sorry, figure.
The other way. Go the other way. The other way. The other way. That's
up to the hats, the face. Past
there we
that.
go.
Right straight to the top of that one. I just heard you indicate that this is the type of mask. I understand it's an example that you'll be expecting the divers to work to in the habitat. Upon demonstrating the harness and with your recommendation that this is supposed to be done with surface applied air, just for the clarification, my clarification, once you dive in with hard hat and stuff, you get to the habitat. If you could walk me through that the process that a diver would go from hard hat to this?
No hard hat. We don't use, I would never recommend that heavy 35 pounds hard hat to be used even from the surface to the habitat.
Okay.
That's,
No
no, you
problem.
don't need to do that. This is the hat that you stay on at
So
all
you
times.
use this hat to dive straight to the habitat?
Yeah, from the entrance
Okay,
to the
that's,
water.
that's
yeah.
a clarification.
Yeah, I
So
wouldn't
you
use
would
that hard
go,
hat. You can't, no, there's no way to take off that hard hat by yourself.
well, that's what I was
Right?
going
That's,
with, yeah.
that's basically impossible to do.
No, no, sir.
We usually have tenders. So
Yeah.
in the habitat, there's no one to help you there.
The reason why I was asking, and that's why I wanted the clarification, we heard testimony earlier that surface supply diving to non-standard. No, not this hat really, but about 27.
Oh, you have a
here.
hat here.
Yes. But I'm not
That's a
making reference to
27.
that. Yeah, 27, all 27. Yeah. Earlier we heard that, you know, because we dive into, well, not we, there's a dive executed to a standard, surface applied, diver gets to the habitat, de-rigs, and then he would use one of those hats, fake bandmasts to execute the job. So why I wanted clarity for that is with the Delta P incident, if he de-rigged, and that was set up in the habitat for use of the diver. Once he gets into the habitat, the probability that he might be attached to the surface is not.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
We have never thought about any time to any of our students to ever take off their equipment underwater.
Yeah.
So that's why we use that hat. From the time you leave the surface, you keep it on until the time you exit.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. All right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I have real trouble with the idea of somebody wearing this thing and having to take it off inside that. Right, good. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Right, questions from others, please. We will proceed until 5 o'clock and then we'll stop. So, first of all, hands up, those who want to ask a question. Right, good. I know Mr. Peterson does. All right, so we'll start with Miss Alfonso, please, from the union.
Pardon?
Yes.
Yes.
You've arranged for this witness
Yes.
to be called, so
Yes.
I mean, all witnesses are our witnesses, and this is a witness tendered as an expert rather than anything else, even though he had some minor connection on the day. We've taken a position hitherto that those who are most closely associated with the witness should have the opportunity to go last. That's the position I've adopted. So I'm perfectly content for you to go now, but you're not going to get a second bite of the cherry. So if you want to wait until after Mr. Peterson has asked questions tomorrow, you are more than welcome to wait until then.
I was so, like Pavlov's dogs, anxious with my hand up at a very early stage. But yes,
Very wise,
Mr. Chairman.
very wise.
I'm a well-trained Pavlov dog.
Do you wish to go last?
I will go last, Mr. Chairman. But
Then
I said
I
I
will-
was so anxious to make sure I did not miss my
Then I will
turn.
permit that, and I appreciate Mr. Peterson pointing it out to me. So yes, you will go last.
Always here to help the commission to get it right.
Well, I gathered that much, and I'm grateful. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. So, Mr. Ramadar, do I see you, Mr. Pegas, also wanted to ask some questions?
Not this afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My issue is very simple and narrow. This witness has referenced certain conversations with a witness that I placed before the commission in the person of Mr. Rolf Seals.
Yes.
Now, I had no instructions from Mr. Rolf Seals with respect to this witness's interaction with him. So I'm simply asking for the opportunity to confirm that. And if there is a need for me to put anything to him, I would ask to do so tomorrow morning.
Right. Well, first of all, I understand your position. I did, again, I reiterate, point this out first thing this morning, asking everybody to look at the statement during the course of the day. And I do appreciate he mentions Mr. Seals on a number of occasions. I'm not sure how vital it is, but there is that content there. I rather suggest or I think the likelihood is that we're unlikely to get to you before 5 o'clock today in any event. So, Mr. Ramadar, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And Dr. Cherry, I understand you're also a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
Could you help us a little bit? From your understanding of the circumstances from the accident around 3 o'clock to a survivor exiting the environment around 5:30, what level of anxiety would you have had to entertain a rescue plan?
Could you just say it again? Sorry, I
Of
just
course.
lost you there a sec.
Yes.
Okay.
Knowing what you do today, that the incident occurred around 3 o'clock, and that there was a survivor coming out of the pipe around 5:30 thereabouts, what level of anxiety or urgency would you have assumed would have been required to entertain a rescue effort?
Very high anxiety.
Yes. And anxiety transforms itself into time frames, isn't it?
In that case, yes, sir.
Yes. You would not have considered, as a true professional, hours if it could be avoided and be done in a shorter period of time, isn't it?
Once it could be done safely, yes, sir.
Yes.
Shortly.
And to ensure that you could expand the period of survivability, you have told us here today that you had suggested that a hose, and I use that term loosely, an umbilical, be placed into the pipe for the purpose of admitting air, so that if divers were closer by, they could benefit from that and extend their lives, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Sitting as you are today, do you know whether any such effort was made?
No, sir, I don't know.
Would it surprise you to learn from all the evidence we've heard so far that no such effort was made?
I made a suggestion, so I don't know.
But was it a loose suggestion or one for sustenance of life?
Well, as an instructor, when I hear something like that immediately, I mean, there's a lot of textbooks in my head.
Yeah.
I immediately would come up with a suggestion, not knowing full details. Send air to the person.
Of course.
That's just natural.
Well, very early on in the inquiry, we actually had asked Mr. Way, one of the incident management team members, whether they even considered that. And till this day, we've heard no witness say that they did entertain it, first of all, and two, act upon it to put a sustenance in terms of air into the pipe.
It's a simple thing.
Simple thing, that's what I thought. Now, to be clear, you may have it in your statement, but for the benefit of many others, are you being paid for the evidence you give today?
No, sir.
Of course not. Do you expect to be retained by PARIA into the future?
No.
No. Have you been retained by PARIA in the past?
No, sir, I've never, no.
No. So you consider your evidence today? No, this is no trick, I'm telling you.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Right. You consider the evidence that you've come to give today is that of a professional giving the best he could in all of the circumstances that have been made available to you.
Yeah, not only for the PARIA incident, for the Trinidad and Tobago as well.
You see, we need more of that in this country. Okay? So that they have...
Those speeches.
Oh, that's Wednesday, is it?
That's,
Thank you.
it is. Don't forget it. And I might remove it on the basis you've already made it.
So, let's see now. You have come as a patriot to give the best information that you could share with us moving forward to ensure that if something like this should recur, what is the best practice we should adopt? Yes. Now, as you've told us already, the anxiety for the rescue in your mind should have been quite high. Would you sacrifice the need for a paper-written risk assessment and for a paper-written or digitally prepared dive plan? Would you sacrifice that?
As I wrote there, digitally, no. Paper, yes. But it wouldn't take long to do.
There you go. And if persons were offering information but on the scene, in the midst of all that anxiety, would it be reasonable to expect, in that light, you're telling people things that you need to do, get it done, and they're ignoring you until you put it in writing? Would that be a reasonable position to take from a position of authority to say, no, put it in writing? Or
the only thing that would be done there in writing would have been a dive plan, which, as I said before, it could be done in less than 30 minutes. And that is very quick to do. I mean, you have the experts there already.
There you go. Now, are you aware, as you are today, of the equipment that was made available that evening by many others like yourself who came there to help? Do you know the nature and quality of the equipment that was brought to bear on a possible rescue?
OTSL boat, I had worked on that boat before, training divers through that boat. They were full of equipment, everything possible that they would have, even a chamber. I have been on, well, I'm going to say Miami divers because that's what I'm accustomed to. And they have equipment as well, surface supply equipment as well, full equipment. And a rescue could have been used, could have been attempted as such using that equipment.
And in terms of the, there was a little bit of a rush from my friends when it was spoken about the length of the umbilical, and it was not advisable to join it. What was the length of the umbilicals, as far as you're aware, that would have been available that evening or into the night of the 25th of February?
I can't remember exactly now the length of umbilical that would have been on the boats as such. Right? However, what is important for is not so much the length of the umbilical. What was important was the U.S. Navy dive manual stated that you have to have time in which a diver have to go into that pipe.
Right.
And what I'm talking about here is decompression, non-decompression time. So you're going down 60 feet. The U.S. Navy dive table is very clear that if you're at 60 feet, you go to the next one, which is 70 feet, and checking the time that you stay on the water, which allows you 48 minutes.
Right.
So a diver could only go down there up to 48 minutes. That's returning,
Yes.
Right? Staying down and coming back to the surface without getting nitrogen, excess nitrogen in his system. So that gives you 60 feet, which is like about, in this situation where he's going feet first, it's going to take about 5 minutes. By the time he reaches the bend here, then he has about another couple of minutes or even longer at that point to turn. So that gives you now, remember half the time we're dealing with him because he has to come back up.
Of course, I get that.
Just about 15 to 20 minutes into the pipe now to search for anyone that's there.
Beautiful.
So again, so he has umbilical. The umbilical is not the issue.
I appreciate that.
Right.
But the distance into the pipe is.
Yes.
Right. So in terms, knowing what you do, that Christopher Boudram had articulated that he had counted 2 well seams. And we've learned from many others that a length of pipe is
40.
approximately 40 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, sir.
So we're looking at 80 feet, 120 feet maximum. Is that an insurmountable opposition to a rescue? Having regard to the fact that you have your umbilical, you have divers, and you have other equipment that may be required.
No, it's not insurmountable as such as you put it. It's just the other factors that you will have. Again, as I said, the amount of air available,
Correct.
the skill of the divers available. But attempt could have been made at that point because all the guys were there. So, and the umbilical was there. The supervisors were there to bring them back safely out of the pipe.
Thank you. So we had personnel, adequate personnel, from what you know.
Yes, sir.
Adequate equipment.
Yes, sir.
We had unlimited air in terms of the umbilicals.
Correct.
And nobody called you back. Nobody called you. Said Mr. Seal said he'll call you back.
Well, I just told him I'm always available for anything, which it's normal.
And what did he respond to you?
I'll call you back or something like that. Yeah, I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Did anybody call you back, get back to you?
No, sir.
You appreciate that you had a viable position in terms of endeavoring a rescue?
Yes. In fact, what I also added, if I may.
Yes, of course.
My son had visited Michael there at the scene outside PARIA.
Oh.
And my son is an instructor, master instructor, scuba diver, so he had visited them and chatted with them. And I told him over the phone, I said, tell them, if they need me at any point for anything, let me know. And I remember speaking to Michael very quickly about a couple of things, but I knew that the situation that they were in, so I didn't want us to take too long. But I told him, I said, if you want need me for anything, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I'm not coming by the gate there.
No. And certainly this would have been sometime after.
That would have been on
the Saturday?
when they gathered by the gate. I can't remember.
It wouldn't have been the same night.
No.
No. Thank you very much. And you do know that there were Coast Guards men armed there on site.
I don't know about the arm. I don't know anything about that. Yeah. Nobody told me about that. I know about it after.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to tell you it's not yet 5, and I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, you catch me out, I'm afraid, Mr. Ramadan. All right. Are you in a position, Ms. Prasad Maharaj, to ask your questions now?
I am, please.
Please do.
Good afternoon. The name is Kamini Prasad Maharaj, and I represent LMCS Limited. I'd like to refer you to the figure 1, which is on screen. Yes.
Yes, sir.
With the Kirby Morgan surface supply. My question to you is, this is in relation, a PPE in relation to dive-in operations and work conducted within the chamber. That's what your evidence is.
Within the habitat, yes.
All right. The question is, in respect of works that are to be conducted within the chamber, there are to be hot works at some point in time within the chamber. That's welding. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Would there be need for additional apparels or segments to this this picture that we're looking at, this mask?
Yes, there would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would necessarily add weight
No.
and bulk? Well,
No.
Could you explain?
Okay, let me explain.
Yes.
All right. First of all, no underwater welding jobs or any kind of burning, cutting or anything must be done on scuba. So it's going to be on surface supply with a mask like that. But if you could, I'll come back to this one, but let me go up to the other one, if you don't mind, to go up to the other figure. Right, this one, there is a connection by Kirby Morgan. I'm supposing it will fit the first one as well. But we have used this mask where there's a connection. You see those holes on top there along the band, the silver part? There are screws that can go in there. And we are onto the side where we attach a welding mask to it. Just a thin welding piece of equipment, which can raise to do work and then back down to weld and cut. And I'm supposing that with Kirby Morgan, they would also have an attachment, or you can make an attachment for that one on top.
And this is the mass that is 12 pounds?
This one is 12, the other one is only 2 pounds.
And just to confirm, the one that is just 2 pounds wouldn't be one that we can use for welding or any kind of...
Yes, what I'm saying is that you can attach the visors to that. There is no big deal to that.
To this very one that is 2 pounds?
Yeah, we can make it work. We have done it before.
And it would be a safe system of work for the person operating hot works?
Yeah, because you just raise it off.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at material and that kind of thing, so that's what I'm asking you.
Or the material meaning the rubber?
Because what I'm thinking, and I'm not a welder, I'm not a diver, but what I'm thinking is that you would need an apparel or that protects you. That's what the PPE is.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
What you see with this one, it's fitted close to you. Yeah. And if you know some welders, what they have is the welding mask, the one that you put over your face. That could have gone on that, over your head, and that will protect your entire face.
Right. And so in any event, in addition to this, there is something additional that the workers would have had to have in order to be safely performing their work within the chamber.
Welding work or cutting work, if not normal.
Right. All right. In relation to diving qualifications,
yes, ma'am.
Does a commercial diver necessarily have to be a PADI certified diver? First?
In my school, what I do, I recommend that all persons who come to us to do commercial diving should be scuba certified. Not PARIA as such only, but scuba. PARIA is not the only,
right,
but scuba
scuba.
certified. And the reason for that being is that it gives them an opportunity to see if, hey, am I going to spend this large amount of money for something I don't like? So I get them involved in scuba, get them diving at 60, 70 feet of depth, put them into night diving as well, all that sort of thing, and then we move them on to commercial.
All right. At your paragraph 13, if you can be taken to it, you said that you verified in relation to Mr. Henry
Yes, ma'am.
that he had not been certified?
Yes.
All right. So my instructions are is that he was in fact PADI certified and had, as you mentioned, that he had one session of training. Yeah, but the one session of training you're referring to is in relation to scuba, not so?
Yeah, well,
PADI.
since you asked that question, if I may, I may tell you this part. I don't know what your instructions are.
Yeah.
But Mr. Kazim Ali called me sometimes after the incident and asked me for if I had Yusuf's certification card. I told him, no, Yusuf never trained with me. Right? So, and then I called my son, because usually I'll call him for that. And he said he remembered Yusuf, and he came to the pool one time, just one time. So I have him check PADI to see what certification, if he went somewhere else. So I told him, before you check and see if you see Budram. He found Budram. I said, check and see if you see Junior, Kazim Ali's son. He said, yes, he saw that as well. Check on the same thing and see if you saw Yusuf. And I gave him the full name. He said, no, it is not there. So I don't know. I could only say what